Hello, my friends. Welcome to the second video of spiritual science. On the previous video, I present you in a very simple way the greatest mystery of the universe. I mentioned and I explained a little about the 7 dimensions of nature and how the human being deal with those dimensions. So today we can go deeper. But just to review what we saw in the last video, I present you that the nature has 7 dimensions. And when we are here in the manifested world, our consciousness can move through all the 7 dimensions. But usually our consciousness deals basic with the physical, emotional, and mental dimensions, the more dense dimensions that are related to ephemeral expression. Then we have 3 more dimensions, higher dimensions, the psychic, the intelligence, and wisdom that we call infinite. Those 3 dimensions represent the journey of spirituality. And our goal is the highest dimension, is called the divine. This dimension is eternity. So today, I want to share with you more information about the human spiritual structure. So there are many models, many proposals in many different schools. If you think just about the material expression, we may say that we are a combination of cells. We are a gathering of cells. Each human being is a gathering of about 50 trillion cells living together in a perfect balance and harmony. We may say that we are a combination of systems: respiratory system, neurologic system, reproductive system, digestive system, all working together to sustain life in the body. So there are many different approaches. But today I want to talk about more spiritual approaches. So we have, for example, a very simple approach. We are body and mind. Very simple. We have this concrete element made by flesh and blood and bones, and we have a consciousness, we have a mind, using this body like a vehicle throughout our journey in life. Another vision is we are much more than body and mind. We are spirit and soul. And it's correct too. It's just a different perspective. We are a spirit, a consciousness, and we have a soul, a mortal soul, in a journey, incarnation after incarnation. And each incarnation represents a possibility to learn more. Because the only way to learn something is being here in the manifested world. Without a manifested expression, we cannot check if an information is correct. But here in the manifestation, we can take an information, make experience, and recognize it makes sense, is valid, is correct or not. So the only way to build the structure of our knowledge is living here in the manifested world. So this is how manifestation is so important. Other schools mention that we are a spirit, working together with a higher self. It's correct too. We, the spirit, we are the self, or this Maya, this small self, and you can enjoy and have a better understanding of life and the moment this small self connects its higher uh, self. This connection will improve the possibilities in our manifested journey. Other schools mention that we are a combination of three elements: ego, spirit, and higher self, or ego, self, and higher self. About 100 years ago, a brilliant mind, Freud, create a new science, psychology. And he was brilliant because he make available to the concrete and scientific world informations that was just researched by mysticals and people dedicated to understand spirituality. So according Freud, the psychological model is a combination of three elements: id, ego, and superego. So id represents a more primitive element, a part of ourselves that just reacts to external influences. It's pure instinct. Ego is our mind, is our consciousness. And superego is a deeper level of ourselves, like the level of an inner master. So this is very close to what spiritual science have to share. But we need to make some adjustment in the vocabulary use. So what for psychology, Freud's psychology? They have id. In spiritual sciences, it represents personality or ego. The personality is the most external layer of ourselves. The word personality came from the Latin word persona. And persona in Latin means mask. So personality or ego are the interface between our inner universe and the external universe. Thanks to our personality, you have to interact with the world outside using this mask of the ego. What for psychology? They use the word ego. In the spiritual science, we use the words self or spirit. So the self or spirit is what we understand by ourselves. When I think I am Carlos, is myself thinking. The self or the spirit is the most important element of our spiritual structure because they have a unique quality. This unique quality is free will. Then you have the superego for psychology, that for spiritual science we understand as the higher self. The higher self is the inner master we have, the first inner master that shows us the pathway in life. The higher self is the part of ourselves that understand the difference between good and evil, the foundations and the foundations of the moral principles. So after to make an adjustment in the words from using personal and psychology and in spiritual science, we can go to the next level. So now let's talk about the human spiritual structure model according to spiritual science. So we mentioned that we are composed not by three elements, but by four elements. So the first one is the ego, the personality, is the external layer. As I mentioned, is the interface between ourselves and the world outside. Personality has something very interesting, a fast reaction, what we call instinct. So personality is very important to help us to survive. In some situations, when our life is in danger, sometimes we don't have time to think about it. We just need to react. And this is a function of our ego. Fast reactions, quick reactions. So the personality has the purpose to keep us alive and inviting us to keep growing throughout life. The self, as I told you, is what we understand by what we are. The self has this amazing quality we call free will, because the self is the one who decides which path we'll take in life. Because life is a school of possibilities. We are here alive to learn about universe, to learn about ourselves. But there's many different pathways to learn. So the self is the one who is always choosing the path we'll follow in our journey of manifestation. The self and the personality, they have something in common. They have their focus to the present and to the past. So the experiences we already live. The self and the personality have no idea about the future. So it's like we are walking in the pathway of life backwards because our eyes are looking to the past. So this is the difference between the personality and the self and the higher self, because the higher self have a profound understanding of past, present, and future, because higher self is always looking for the future. And when higher self thinks it's important for us, he tells us some tips about the future. And you understand like a premonition, like an insight. But it's up to us to accept the information and use the information or not. Sometimes we have a premonition and you think, nonsense, and you keep going the same path. So the premonition is an opportunity you receive from the higher self to change our direction to avoid more difficult pathways. So the higher self is always helping us, but it's up to ourselves to decide if you accept this help or not. So we have one more element, and this element is hidden in a very deeper place inside of our being, ourselves. The fourth element we may call being. The being, to make it simple, is the master of our higher self. And the higher self is the master of ourselves. So we may say that the being is the higher self or our higher self. So if I told you that the higher self that have a profound consciousness about the present, past, and future of this life, I may say that the being have a deep understanding about present, past, and future in all our lives, all our incarnations. So the being have the entire map of our journey in the existence, not only in this life, but in all our lives. The being is very difficult to be connected. The only way we can connect our being is through our higher self. So in the moment we begin a spiritual journey, the first step is to find our higher self. In the moment we begin to interact with our higher self, when you begin to have a profound conversation with the higher self, our higher self will show the pathway to find our being. But it's not easy. Usually the self is more amused by our personality. As I told, the personality is very fast and produce quick reactions. And sometimes those quick reactions save our lives. So our self think, oh, the ego is the important thing. So I'll follow my ego. Big mistake. Because when ourselves follows the ego, we are still in a journey, a blind journey, because you cannot see what happens next. So we learn with the experience we live, and usually we learn with our mistakes. When you follow the ego or personality, we are on that situation where to learn sometimes cause pain. Because when you make a mistake, usually the mistake is painful in some level, physical, emotional, mental level. But we learn with this to avoid to repeat the same mistakes. In the moment we decide to follow our higher selves, we can learn without pain. We can learn without leaving the uncomfortable situation, just listening. The inner voice telling us which path we have to take to avoid pain, suffering, and discomfort. Some schools mention that the ego, our personality, is an enemy we need to fight. So they believe that we can survive without the ego, and you can have a much better experience in life. This is a huge mistake. As I told you, the essence of human being is a combination of four elements. The ancient philosopher already mentioned that to be here in the manifested world, our expression is a combination of four elements: earth, water, air, and fire. The same works for the spiritual expression. We need a combination of the four elements. So we don't need to fight our ego. We need to educate our ego. You know, the ego helps us in our growth because our ego is always pushing us forward. The ego is not only in charge to take care of our survival, but to keep pushing us to keep growing in life. But the problem is the ego don't know about good and evil as the higher self knows. The ego have no idea about moral uh, foundations. So if the ego is just pushing us to grow, the ego don't care if you take the wrong pathway, because the ego just want to be bigger than the others in any level. So if I consider better than the others because I discovered something amazing that helps mankind, or if I do something good to help other people, it projects me above the others. But if I'm a criminal that make horrible things, it projects me above the others. So, for the ego, there's no difference. The ego just wants us to be projected above the others. So that's the reason we need the guidance of the higher self to support our journey with the basic principles about good and evil, the moral principles. And so that's the reason people say personality or ego are bad. Some schools, spiritualistic schools, they suggest that we need to put our ego in a prison, inner prison, or to kill our ego. Do you know what happens if you really can kill our ego? It's almost impossible, but if you can kill our ego, our personality, we will miss an important element, the element that keeps pushing us to grow. And the moment we don't have the ego anymore, we have no more motivation. An example of this happens in the last century when scientists make some experiments disconnecting the front lobe of our brain from the rest. Lobotomy. And what it creates people like robots or zombies. They are alive, they interact with the others, but they have no will, no motivation to create something new, to find new challenges in life. So this is what means to exist without ego. Another possibility, when we are just ego or personality, higher self, and being, and we have no self. Our self is our consciousness. Without our consciousness, we are unconscious. We are in coma. We are living a life like a vegetable. Only the physical functions sustain life in this body, but the conscience is not present anymore. So this is not a way we can say that we are human being. So if you lost any element of this group of four, we lost our humanity. We're not human beings anymore. We cannot exist without the ego or personality. We cannot exist without the self. And what happens if you don't have the higher self anymore? Now we are in trouble. Because as I told you, the higher self is our master, our first master, the one who shows us the pathway, the one who teaches the difference between good and evil actions, the one who brings the moral principles. When a person has no higher self, he becomes monsters, psychopaths, because we don't care about the others anymore. We just focus on our selfish desires. and you search our self-desires whatever cost. This is how the monsters are created. When a human being stops to listen the teachings of the higher selves and becomes more and more selfish, just doing things to support our desires, in the moment our actions begins to hurt other people, to hurt nature. In some moment, the higher self gave up about us and go away. So this is when we stop being humans and become monsters. So there's no options to be a human being without a higher self. And the last possibility is when we are just ego or personality, self and higher self, and you don't have the being anymore. And the moment we don't have the being, we are not incarnated anymore, because the being is the interface between us and the energy of life. The being is the one who brings the manifestation source of energy to allow us to be here in the material world. So to be here, we need the presence of the four elements. Okay. It's very important to understand this structure of the human spiritual model to go ahead in our journey. So in the next episode, I'll combine information I'm sharing with you on this video and informations from the previous one when I showed the dimensions of nature. Unfortunately, ourselves, our consciousness, prefer to give the guidance of our journey in life to our ego, because the ego is fast. So do you know what happens when you decide to follow the ego? What happens is, like a blind is guiding another blind, because our personality or ego have no idea about the future. It's trying different paths. So if ourself gives the guidance to our personality, it's like a blind guiding another blind. So it's not the best option. So in our journey in life, in the moment we understand that as a self, we need to find our higher self, finally, we'll find a trustful guide to our journey. The higher self is like that expert that understands how to orientate themselves in the desert to guide another person. You know, the desert of life, there's no roads or highways, there's no signs to follow. So it's a very subtle the way you have to find to orientate ourselves in this journey of life. And you need a trustful guide. So this trustful guide is higher self. So in the moment our self begins an inner journey, going deeper and deeper inside to find the higher self, we are given the first step, the real first step in the spiritual journey. Because the higher self is the one who knows all the pathways, who knows all the lessons we need to learn to go ahead. The higher self is the one who helps us to follow the pathways through all the seven dimensions of nature, to reach our way back home. Last episode, I told it, our home is eternity. We are far, far away from home because we are on this ephemeral world where eternity is not present because nothing lasts forever on this manifested world. But something inside is telling us that we are not ephemeral. So this voice that is guaranteed that you're not ephemeral is the voice of the higher self. So the spiritual journey begins. In the moment our consciousness begins to have a conversation with the higher self. And deeper is this connection. Easier is our journey. So we are here to learn. Life is amazing school. And the spirituality is an amazing journey to unveil dimensions and more dimensions, where we will find how amazing was the human being, because we have so many possibilities in our hands. But to learn the possibilities and to use all those possibilities, we need this first contact, the first connection with our higher self. After this connection, the doorway to this amazing journey will be totally open. But this will be a topic for a next episode. Thank you so much for being here with me. If you like this, the information I share with you, please click a like and see you in the next episode. Bye bye. Thank you.